Let's continue. Okay. Chapter 21 in the Hidden Church Revealed by Loretta S.Q. Owens, second edition. Okay. Bryant looked at his watch. He had 10 minutes to walk over to Sophia's apartment. Even though he was now thinking about Kelsey, he knew he had to get her off his mind. Otherwise, he would not be able to give his whole heart and honesty to Sophia. Brian talked to the Lord and said, "Help me. Get Kelsey off my mind." Yes, yet he did not want to forget Kelsey. He did not know how to handle this new happiness with Sophia, as it was a reality. Brian realized he had grown to accept some things that wasn't. His feelings for Kelsey were something he understood even though they weren't part of a healthy relationship. Thinking about Sophia made his heart beat so fast he thought it would burst out, though, as it was hard to believe that he was now in a real relationship with someone he loved. Brian heard the Lord say, "Calm down, Brian. What's for you will be for you." At that blissful idea, Brian just laughed. The air was cool, yet nice, enough for two robins to sing up in the willow tree. The cool breeze kept the insects from annoying him. Meanwhile, Sophia looked at the clock anxiously. "Oh, Lord, Brian will be here in 10 minutes. What should I say?" Sophia felt the Lord's grace. Bryant was thinking about what he should say also. Should I give her a kiss? Bryant rang the doorbell. Sophia opened the door. He smiled and said, "Hello, pretty flower." She laughed. "Well, hello, sweet dove." He grabbed her in his arms and hugged her tightly. Sophia laughed again. Well, come on in, Sophia and Brian. "Come on in," Sophia said that. Sophia and Brian's hearts was both beating fast. They said simultaneously, "My heart's going to burst." They both laughed. Sophia walked over to her stereo system and turned on a Sam Cooke CD that she had recently bought. Dinner was to be ready in a few minutes, she said, walking over to the kitchen. "Do you need any help?" Brian called from the living room. "No," Sophia called back, surprised that he offered to help. Would you like some anyway?" he inquired playfully. "I suppose you could pour us some wine," she sighed with a blush. After they ate dinner, they danced to the romantic music. It's 8 o'clock. Maybe I should go," Brian said. Sophia smiled. "The night is young." They held hands while sitting on the sofa. Turning his body to face her, Brian said, "I want to look in your eyes when I talk to you." Sophia smiled and said the only word she could then come up with, "It's okay." "Sophia, I didn't tell you anything about myself." "Brian, I didn't mention anything to you either. Before we get married, I want everything laid on the table," Brian said. Sophia smiled in disbelief. "Brian, did you just propose to me?" Brian laughed. "Oh, Sophia, I'm sorry. Will you marry me?" "Brian, let's put everything on the table, as you put it, and see if we even like each other afterwards." "But I believe my answer will still be yes, Brian." Brian looked at Sophia with a serious expression on his face. "Likewise, I can't imagine ever not having you in my life again. May I turn off the music?" "Yes, you may," Sophia said. Brian got up and disappeared into the living room. The music was turned off, and the only sound in the house was the hum of the refrigerator. "Do you want to talk about yourself first?" Brian asked when he came back from the living room. "No, I'd rather you go first," Sophia smiled. "Sophia, I already told you about my first wife, Susan." Susan laughed. "Brian, what do you mean by your first wife?" Brian had a troubled look on his face as if he was going to cry. Sophia grabbed his hands. "Relax, Brian. What I'm about to tell you might sound insane. After Susan left me, I became involved with the pastor's wife." Brian paused briefly. "It took place in the supernatural world, though sometimes I wasn't sure if it was only there. Many times I found myself in the same kind of trance, Sometimes I would find myself awake in a strange hotel when I didn't know how I even gotten there. Sophia just looked at Bryant with wide eyes. Before her car accident, she would have laughed, had thought this guy is crazy. Nice job, Sophia. You meet a decent guy and he's loco. Yet in her heart, she believed him. After meeting Jesus in the vision and seeing Brian in the spirit world, she had started to believe in the supernatural. Her heart began beating faster. What Brian was saying was, for some reason, exciting her body. Brian, I believe you. Sophia, I'm not finished. You made love to someone in a supernatural, Sophia said in a quiet voice. Yes, her name was Kelsey. I married her in the spirit before she broke my heart, Brian said. Broke your heart? What do you mean? Sophia asked. Right after I married Kelsey in the spirit, there was an event in my old church. Kelsey's ex-husband was sick, so the church came together for a retreat to pray for the pastor. My half-brother Cal told me about it. I wasn't going to the church at the time, nor did I live in the same city as Kelsey anymore. We only met in the spirit. I couldn't stand it anymore, so I called her and told her I was coming to the retreat. She didn't really say much on the phone, but when I arrived at the retreat, Kelsey treated me as if I was some scum of the earth. Yes, scum of the earth. Okay. All of the pain I felt from my first wife came back to the surface then. All the pain that I felt from my stepfather also overwhelmed me. Kelsey was acting as if she didn't even know me. So I left the retreat with my 3 daughters and a broken heart. I felt like a fool. What was I doing with my life? I was making love to this woman anytime she felt like it. Yet I couldn't even go to the retreat and get a warm smile from her. Sophia started to cry. Why were you afraid to tell me? Sophia asked. Because you thought I was so holy, Brian said. I still think you're wonderful, Brian. What happened after you left the retreat? You said that Kelsey was your wife, Sophia asked. Kelsey had the audacity to come to me in the spirit a few nights later if nothing had happened. She didn't even apologize. I felt as if I was only a piece of property to her. So I told her that if she ever came to me again, I would blow her brains out, Brian said with a repentant heart. Did she come back again? Yes, she cried. Yes, he cried. No. Yes, she cried to me on the phone and said she couldn't stand not seeing me. And this is Brian talking to Sophia about Kelsey, talking on the phone now. She wanted me to marry her. Okay. When she called me through, though, she herself was dying. But I loved her so much that I married her. We were married for 3 weeks before she died. Okay, she died now. I know this part is hard to believe, Sophia, but the 3 weeks we were married and I could be with her in the public, I never once made love to her. She had a rare disease and she was far too sick for anything of the kind. So she married this woman, Kelsey, Brian did. And so when he married her, she was sick, so he married her. And then, but he never made love to her in the natural, only in the spirit world. She had a rare disease and she was far too sick for anything of the kind. The doctors could not even help her. So every night I held her in my arms until she fell asleep. She eventually got right with the Lord before she died. I didn't want to go on though after she passed. I wanted to commit myself to a men's institution because I had loved Kelsey that much. Now Kelsey, don't forget, is the one that came in the spirit world and had sex with him. Okay? Don't get that confused with his wife, Susan. About a month after she died, however, the Lord had some saints persuade me to commit myself to a mental institution. They told me to think about my daughters still. I cried myself to sleep every night after Kelsey died. Oh, it was really hooked. One night, the Lord eventually appeared to me. He told me about you, and before we ever met, the Lord showed me a vision of our future. Sophia was still holding Brian's hand. Brian, I wish I could have been loved like Kelsey. Brian squeezed Sophia's hands. Sophia, I don't know what's happening, but what I feel for you is greater and deeper than anything I could ever felt for Kelsey. Brian, I want to talk about my past on our next date. Sophia, are you upset with me? Brian said with a concerned expression on his face. After Brian left, Sophia said to the Lord, "Oh Lord, please let Brian love me. This man loves with a deep passion, and how I long for someone to love me this way." When Brian got home, the girls ran into his arms and said, "Dad, how did it go?" "Super," Brian said with excitement on his face. The girls giggled. When Brian was alone with the Lord, he prayed, "Oh Lord, please let Sophia love and forgive me." Thank you, Jesus. So we're going to stop there.